Hey everyone, this is Stren from ExtremeRigs.net, and today we are looking at the new EVGA NEX 1500 power supply. This got released yesterday, and I got mine this morning, so pretty happy about that. I was lucky enough to be one of the winners of EVGA's competition giveaway. First time I've won something since 1990, which is quite a long time ago. Some of you may not have even been born then, which is quite depressing for some of the rest of us. Anyway, so let's go ahead and open it up. So this is their new flagship power supply with all the bells and whistles. It's pretty much the most expensive power supply out there too. It retails at $450. It's quite a lot for most people for power supply. Alright, so we got a pretty decent box here. Put that down for a second. So, as you can see, it has the classified brand on it, and that kind of designates that EVGA are trying to do their kind of top of the line design on this, and that's probably why it's priced so high. So, let's go ahead and open it. If we can figure out how to open it. Okay, this way. Whenever I'm making a video, I always have problems opening boxes. Alright, so then we have two boxes inside. One of which will be the power supply, which is this heavy one, and then this will be all the cables. So before we do that, let's just compare this. I have a bunch of AX1200s, so I ripped one out of my workstation just so we can kind of compare what's going on here. So here's the AX1200 box in comparison. This one's more of a cube, this is more of a rectangle, doesn't really matter. They both look pretty classy, you know. So in addition, there's a whole bunch of stuff on the back, information that you probably would have known before you bought it. So one thing that really distinguishes this from the other power supplies on the market, well really there's two things. There's the individually sleeved cables, which come as standard. You can get that on the AX1200 or pretty much any of the AX series, I think, from Corsair, but you have to pay extra. It also has the USB link that allows you to monitor a lot of the stuff that's going on with the power supply. And again, that's kind of similar to the very new AX1200i power supply. So, you know, these two power supplies are kind of similarly priced once you add in the extra cables, if you want the individual sleeve cables. And they have similar features. The difference is, you know, the AX1200i is rated platinum, this is rated gold, but this is 1500 watts. And it can push 1650 watts if you push it into the overclock mode. So it really depends what you want. The AX1200 is a little cheaper, definitely cheaper if you don't get the sleeve cables or you want to sleeve them yourselves. But this is the big boy, you know. 1500 watts is a lot of power. If you're looking at the AX1200, you know, back in the day you'd say, with your GTX 480s or something, you might say, okay, 1200, it's probably not enough for 480s if I'm overclocking. You know, now with Kepler and things like that, things are more power efficient. So, you know, you can do 4 680s on a AX1200 for, you know, 90% of the time. Maybe if you're doing some liquid nitrogen benching, you're going to need a little more power than that. And so that's one of the great things about this power supply is it's very much a benching power supply. Or, you know, the only other case really that you'd need it would be something like an SR2 rig. But you've got to be thinking quad SLI, quad crossfire, or multiple processors to really kind of be needing this. However, some people just like to be overkill, or they like the branding, you know, each their own. So let's go ahead and get this open probably this time. Except this time, get it right. So let's go ahead and open up the cable box. So, now we got all that open. We have a mighty chunky power supply cable. Let's just open that up real quick. There's the rest of that. So, you can see this thing is freaking huge. If we compare that to the AX1200 power supply cable, which is thicker than average cable anyway, you can see the EVGA one is just way chunkier. This is a 300 volt cable, and does it? Yeah, it's 12 AWG versus, well, I can't even find them. Oh, hang on. This is 300 volt 14 AWG. So just a little thicker gauge wire on the EVGA for, you know, better current handling. It's probably a little overkill, but nothing wrong with that when you're buying an overkill power supply. So, another bag. These kind of look like anti-static bags. I'm not sure if they really are or not, but I'm not sure I'm a fan of the bags either, but there we go. So, here's another individually sleeved cable. I'm going to bring the braiding up closer. Not sure if I'm bleeding. It's always a good sign. So it's a little thinner by the look of it than MDPC. And the braiding seems pretty tight. I mean, it doesn't have the quality feel of MDPC, but it's certainly not bad. And it's nice that it's heat shrinkless. You know, the Corsair cables, they have the heat shrink coming out pretty far. It's kind of like out here. And if you're doing heat shrink, you really want it kind of small. You want it back here. It looks just a lot better. So this is one cable. It has the 24 pin for the CPU, and it looks like there's a VGA on there too. So one thing I did want to find out was how long is the 24 pin cable. One problem I have on my Monster Case Labs TX10 case, the case is so big that the AX1200 24 pin cable is not long enough. So you can see this is a pretty long cable. I have the AX1200 cable here, and good news, it is longer. It is longer. So with the AX1200, I actually needed to use an extension to get this to fit in my case. And the AX1200 is a longer cable than most power supplies anyway. So this is a really nice long cable, which is very practical for people like me who have such a ridiculously big case. This bag is all the VGA cables. It's interesting because I saw a VGA cable in here that was black, but then all the rest of these are red. So let's just see if we can find that one. VGA, so it looks like a VGA cable that's coming out of the CPU cable. What is that? Let's isolate that. So, so each one of these CPU cables has CPU at one end and then a VGA at the other. And I wonder if that's for boards like the Rampage 4 Extreme, where they have a VGA connector kind of fairly close to the CPU. That's the only reason I can think of for doing that. So, and for the second CPU, or if you're using two 8-pins on your board, they should be separatable. Sometimes you get a 4-pin. It's interesting, there's no... does not look like these can be separated out, which they can be on the Corsair. So that's a little interesting. Maybe there's some other ones for doing that. And here's the bag of EVGA cables. You can see that there's a lot of them in here. There's supposed to be enough for 16 6+2s. So I'm not going to count all of these right now, but there's certainly a lot of them. And if they say there's 16, then there's probably 16. And these look decently long too. You have one more bag. I guess this is all the accessory cables. You know, your SATAs, your Molexes, all that good stuff. Yeah, so you can kind of see in here. This would be the USB cable. That lets the software control the power supply. Some floppy disk adapter. This would be a bunch of Molexes and a SATA cable. And then this one is just pure SATA, it looks like, yeah, pure drives. So, those are all your cables. What we really want to see is the power supply, which comes in this little kind of canvas bag type thing. So let's clear the rest of the stuff out the way, and then we'll take a look at this and compare it to the AX1200 in size and weight and so on. So here's my trusty AX1200 that I just whipped out of my workstation. It's a little dusty, you can see. And this actually comes in its own kind of velvet pouch type deal. So at first glance, size looks very similar. Let's get this unwrapped. So yeah, very similar indeed. The EVGA supply has this handle, which I'm sure is convenient for some benchers, people who sometimes carry their supplies separately from their test bench. I don't do that, but that's okay. The powder coating, it feels softer in person. I honestly thought that it would be pretty rough. From the photos it looked very kind of grainy. And it does still look grainy, but it's not, I mean, you can tell it's a little rough, but it's not like sandpaper, which is kind of what I expected. You can see all the outputs on here. Just turn them both. So you can see, I mean, here you have eight pins, 6 of which are for the PCI, the graphics cards on the AX1200, and then 2 for the CPU. On the classified, the NEX 1500, we actually have 8 pins for the VGAs, and then you get 2 extra for the CPU. You have your motherboard, same here, and then your SATA connections and peripherals. You have the same amount. You have 6 pins. Not that the connections are, you know, the be-all and end-all. Obviously, some of these can be, you know, double wired or whatever. But that's the setup you're running. It's surprisingly small. I honestly thought that it would come out of the box and really dwarf the AX1200. So I'm very surprised that it's not much bigger. The photos made it look pretty chunky. And while the AX1200 isn't a small supply, it certainly isn't. It's bigger than most supplies. It's also not the biggest supply out there. So something to bear in mind. Almost exactly the same size, which is nice. If you have an AX1200 you're thinking about upgrading, it will fit in exactly the same space. So that's all I have for now. There'll be some photos and more stuff later on. But let's wrap this up.